It's
I
the
am
things
63 years old as I speak these words in Canada. People call that retirement age. Though most of us don't really retire, we just slow down and pretend it was planned. In the UK, where I spent a good part of my life, 63 means you've begun to fade politely. You're still here, but no one is waiting to hear what you think. Age doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives like weather. One season you're busy, the next you're stiff, and somewhere in between you stop being asked what you want. When I was younger, I believed time was patient. I don't mean infinite, just forgiving. I thought it would wait for me while I decided who I wanted to be. I thought ambition could be postponed without interest. That belief shaped my life more than any decision I ever made. I grew up in a town where nothing terrible happened, and nothing extraordinary did either. We were raised on comfort, not courage. People spoke about dreams the way they spoke about weather, something external, something you commented on but never controlled. I was clever enough to notice this, and weak enough to accept it. I wanted to write, not stories meant to impress, but observations, the kind that sit heavy in your chest because they're true. I told myself I would start once life became stable. That was the first lie I believed willingly. Stability is a myth sold to people who are afraid of risk. Instead, I took a job I didn't hate. That sounds harmless, but it's dangerous. Hate forces action. Tolerance invites delay. I told myself I was being sensible. Bills were paid. People nodded approvingly. My days filled up, and my questions slowly emptied out. Years passed quietly. Promotions came, compliments too. None of them felt like mine. They were rewards for reliability, not honesty. I learned to smile at meetings while feeling strangely absent from my own life. I married a good woman. That matters, so I'll say it plainly. She was patient, thoughtful, and sharper than I ever gave her credit for. She believed in beginnings. I believed in postponements. We didn't fight much. That should have worried me. Silence can look like peace if you don't examine it closely. When we had a child, something inside me shifted, not upward, but inward. Responsibility arrived before readiness. I felt fear, though I wouldn't have named it that at the time. I told myself I was providing. Providing is an excellent excuse for emotional distance. I was present in the house, but absent in moments. I attended events, but rarely arrived fully. I kept telling myself there would be time later, time to explain, time to listen, time to change. Children notice these things long before adults do. By my 40s, routine had wrapped itself around my life like insulation. Comfortable, quiet, deadening. I stopped writing entirely. I stopped even thinking about it. When a desire disappears, we like to believe it means we outgrew it. Sometimes it just means we buried it deep enough. My son grew older. He became independent early, which I mistook for strength. In truth, it was adaptation. He learned not to ask much of me. That should have frightened me. Instead, I felt relieved. Fewer demands, fewer chances to fail. Looking back, I see the pattern clearly. Delay dressed up as prudence. Fear disguised as patience. Comfort mistaken for contentment. There was an evening, I remember it well, when I sat alone on the sofa after work. Same posture I use now, same silence. I realized I couldn't remember the last choice I had made simply because I wanted to. Everything had a reason, an obligation, an explanation. That's when a thought crossed my mind, casually, like it had every right to be there. It's fine. I still have time. I didn't know then how dangerous that sentence was. Time doesn't respond when you underestimate it. It doesn't argue or warn you. It simply continues, indifferent to your intentions. You don't feel it leaving. You only notice its absence when you reach for it. I wasn't unhappy in those years. That's important to say. Unhappiness would have forced reflection. I was comfortable, and comfort is far more effective at wasting a life. I tell you this not because I enjoy remembering it, but because this is where regret begins, not with failure, but with delay. Not with bad decisions, but with decisions never made. At 63, I can tell you this with certainty. Most people don't ruin their lives. They postpone them until there's nothing left to begin. And at the time, I truly believed I was being wise. I believed time would understand. There is a moment in a man's life when excuses stop working, not because others reject them, but because he no longer believes them himself. For me, that moment came quietly, the way most honest things do. I was sitting alone in the house we once called ours. The rooms hadn't changed, but they felt unfamiliar, as if they were waiting for people who no longer lived there. Silence has weight when it lingers long enough. You begin to hear things you avoided for decades. My son had left months earlier. He said he needed space. I nodded, said I understood, even smiled. Parents often confuse understanding with acceptance. The truth was simpler. He had learned not to depend on me, and independence was his way out. I told myself that was normal. Children grow up. They leave. That's life. What I didn't say out loud was that I couldn't remember the last time he came to me with something that mattered. I had raised a capable man, yes, but also a distant one. My wife left later, though emotionally she had been gone long before her suitcase crossed the door. She didn't leave in anger. There was no shouting, no accusations. She left calmly, which somehow felt worse. Anger suggests unfinished business. Calm means the account has already been settled. She said she felt invisible. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. How do you defend absence? When the house finally became quiet for good, I did something I had avoided for most of my life. I sat still without distraction. No work, no obligations, no noise, just myself. That's when regret arrived properly. People imagine regret as sharp and dramatic. They're wrong. Regret is slow. It shows you memories you once dismissed and asks why you didn't notice them then. It doesn't accuse. It reminds I began writing again, not because I felt inspired, but because silence had become unbearable. The words came easily now, to easily. They poured out as observations, not stories. About waiting, about postponing, about mistaking safety for wisdom. I wrote about the man I thought I would become, and the one I quietly accepted instead in Canada. People my age are encouraged to enjoy retirement. It's a kind phrase. It assumes you spent your earlier years living fully. For many of us, retirement is not rest, it's reckoning. You finally have time, and suddenly you understand what you should have done with it. I took long walks, watched younger men rush past, convinced they were late for something important. I recognized that look. I had worn it for decades. I wanted to stop them sometimes. Tell them that urgency without direction only leads you faster into regret. But people don't listen when time still feels generous. I received a letter from my son once. Short, polite. He said he was doing well. He hoped I was too. That was all. I read it several times, not for what it said, but for what it didn't. There were no questions, no need for advice. He had learned to navigate life without me. That was the heaviest realization of all. I wasn't a bad man. That's the uncomfortable truth. I was decent, reliable, responsible, and completely avoidant of risk. Life didn't punish me for that. It rewarded me with comfort and quietly took everything else. When you avoid mistakes long enough, you also avoid growth. I see it clearly now. Most regrets are not about what we did wrong, but about what we never had the courage to do right. The conversations postponed, the dreams delayed, the truth softened until it disappeared. People say, "You did your best." I don't argue with them. But I know the difference between doing your best and doing what feels safe. If you're listening to this and thinking, "I'll change later," understand this later is not a place you arrive at. It's a story you tell yourself to stay comfortable today. I sit on the sofa most evenings now. Same place, same posture. The difference is awareness. I no longer pretend there will be another phase where I finally begin. This is the phase. I speak now not to inspire, but to warn. Inspiration flatters the listener. Warnings respect them. Time doesn't take revenge. It simply collects what you owe it, slowly, patiently, without emotion. I am not bitter. I am honest. And honesty at this age is heavier than sadness. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this: life doesn't ask whether you're ready. It moves forward, and one day you realize you were meant to move with it. I learned that lesson late. Too late to change everything, but not too late to tell the truth.